You've done it again, said the thing you can't take back. Burned the bridge, proved them right about you, and in the aftermath, when the adrenaline fades and clarity returns, you knew. You knew exactly what you should have done instead. The gap between who you are in the heat of the moment and who you want to be, that's not a character flaw. It's a skill you never learned. The Stoics mastered it 2,000 years ago. They built empires on it, survived slavery with it, led armies through it. They called it the space between stimulus and response. And starting today, you're going to claim it. Before going into training, subscribe to Stoic audiobooks so you never miss the Stoic trainings that are designed to forge you. Chapter 1. The Collapse. What reaction costs you? You're not weak. You're wired. Your brain was built for a world that no longer exists, a world where the rustle in the grass meant death, where hesitation meant extinction, where react first, think later, kept you alive. That programming saved your ancestors. It's destroying you. Because the threats you face now don't have teeth and claws. They have deadlines and debt, disrespect and disappointment, traffic and texts, and a world that moves faster than your nervous system can process. Your ancient brain doesn't know the difference. A passive-aggressive comment from your boss triggers the same cascade of stress hormones as a charging predator. Your girlfriend's tone at dinner floods your system with the same fight-or-flight chemicals as a life-threatening emergency. And you react, not because you choose to, because you're hijacked. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, takes over. It shuts down your prefrontal cortex, the part that thinks rationally, weighs consequences, remembers who you want to be. Blood flow redirects, heart rate spikes, rational thought goes offline. In milliseconds, you're no longer you. You're a bundle of evolutionary reflexes pretending to make decisions. This is the collapse. The moment stimulus becomes response with no space between them. The moment you forfeit your only real freedom. And the cost? Let's be honest about what it's taken from you. The inventory of damage. That job you lost because you couldn't bite your tongue when the client was being unreasonable. You were right, by the way, completely right, and completely unemployed. The relationship that ended not because of incompatibility, but because of 30 seconds of words you'd give anything to take back. Words that came from somewhere primal and stupid. Words that had nothing to do with what you actually felt, and everything to do with what you could. Held in control. The friendships that quietly faded because you're exhausting to be around. Not because you're a bad person, because you're unpredictable, volatile, the kind of man people have to prepare themselves for. The self-respect that erodes a little more each time you blow up, calm down, and swear it won't happen again. Each time you become the man you despise, the one who proves the people who doubt you right. The opportunities you didn't get because reputation travels, because people talk, because talented but unstable is not a compliment. It's a warning label. Count the cost. Really count it. Not to wallow in regret, not to beat yourself up, but to get brutally honest about the price of reaction. To see clearly what surrendering that space has taken from you. Because until you see it, really see it, you won't do the work required to change it. The pattern recognition. Here's what most men miss. It's not random. You think you lose control unpredictably. You think certain people or situations make you react. You've probably said it. He knows exactly how to push my buttons. She brings out the worst in me. No, they don't. You have a pattern, a specific, predictable pattern of triggers that collapse the space between stimulus and response. For some men, it's disrespect. Any hint that someone isn't taking them seriously, and the space vanishes. The need to prove, to dominate, to put someone in their place overrides everything else. For others, it's criticism. Feedback feels like attack. The space collapses into defensiveness, justification, counterattack. even when the criticism is valid, especially when it's valid. Maybe it's pressure, deadlines, expectations, demands on your time. The space compresses and suddenly you're snapping at people who don't deserve it, taking out your stress on whoever's closest, or intimacy. The moment someone gets close enough to see your weakness, close enough to hurt you, the space disappears. You push them away first. Sabotage before you can be abandoned. The specifics differ. The mechanism is the same. Something in your environment matches a pattern your nervous system learned to treat as danger, not conscious danger, primitive danger, the kind your body responds to before your mind can intervene. And you react. Same trigger, same response. Over and over. A loop you can't break because you don't even realize you're in it. This is why willpower fails, why promising yourself you'll do better next time accomplishes nothing. You're trying to override millions of years of evolution with good intentions. It doesn't work that way. The lie of control, you tell yourself you're in control. You handle pressure at work, you make decisions, you pay your bills and show up on time and hold your life together. And it's true, mostly. Until someone says the thing, does the thing, until the specific combination of circumstances that bypasses your conscious mind and triggers the pattern. Then you're not in control. You're a passenger watching yourself do damage from the inside. The passenger who wonders why you said that. The passenger who knew, even as the words were coming out, that you'd regret them. The passenger who wants to stop but can't, because by the time you realize what's happening, it's already happened. This is the illusion most men live in. They confuse managing circumstances with mastering themselves. You can control your life when things are calm, when no one's challenging you, when the pressure's manageable and the threats are distant. But the moment real resistance appears, the moment life pushes back, control evaporates. Because you never had control, you had compliance, favorable conditions masquerading as self-mastery. Real control isn't how you respond when things are easy. It's how you respond when your amygdala is screaming, when every fiber of your being wants to react, when the old pattern is pulling you like gravity. That's the test, and most men are failing it every single day without realizing they're being tested. What the Stoics knew 2,000 years ago, a slave in Rome figured this out. His name was Epictetus. He had nothing, no freedom, no rights, no control over his circumstances. His owner broke his leg in a fit of rage. He lived at the mercy of people who saw him as property, and from that position, powerless in every external way, he developed a philosophy of complete internal freedom. He taught that you don't control what happens to you. You control only your response to what happens. That the space between stimulus and response is the only sovereignty you truly possess. We cannot choose our external circumstances, he wrote, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Not positive thinking, not pretending bad things aren't bad, but a clear-eyed recognition that between every event and your response to it, there is a gap. That gap is your life's work. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, internalized this lesson. He had everything Epictetus didn't: power, wealth, respect, and he knew it was all meaningless compared to the space between stimulus and response. His private journals, never meant for publication, are full of reminders to himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. An emperor reminding himself daily that his only real power was the pause, the space, the moment of choice between what happened and how he responded. If a slave and an emperor both arrived at the same conclusion from opposite ends of the power spectrum, maybe it's not circumstantial. Maybe it's fundamental. Maybe it's the one thing that actually matters. The space is always there. Here's what you need to understand. The space between stimulus and response always exists. Always. You're not creating something new. You are reclaiming something that's been there all along. Chapter 2. The Pause. 3 seconds of sovereignty. The technique is absurdly simple. So simple you'll be tempted to dismiss it. Don't. When the trigger hits, when someone disrespects you, criticizes you, pressures you, whatever your specific pattern is, you pause. 3 seconds. That's all. One breath, In and out. Not a dramatic pause, not a performance, just a brief, intentional interruption of the automatic pattern. 3 seconds doesn't sound like much. In the context of reaction, it's an eternity. Because in those 3 seconds, everything changes. Your prefrontal cortex comes back online. The flood of stress hormones begins to ebb. The tunnel vision starts to widen. The automatic pattern loses its grip. In 3 seconds, you remember you're more than your reflexes. Here's what it looks like in practice. Your boss sends an email at 9 p.m. questioning your work. The old pattern, immediate response. Defensive, irritated, typing while your heart's still racing. Send. Regret in the morning. New pattern. You see the email. You feel the anger rise. You notice your jaw clenching, your shoulders tensing, and you stop. 3 seconds. 1 breath. In that pause, you feel the anger. You don't suppress it. You acknowledge it. I'm angry. This feels unfair. I want to defend myself. And then you choose, not from anger, from the space beyond it. Maybe you still respond tonight, but the response is measured, clear, professional. The words come from your prefrontal cortex, not your amygdala. Or maybe you realize it's 9 p.m. and nothing productive happens from that state. You close the laptop, deal with it in the morning when you're rested and rational. Either way, you responded. You didn't react. The gap between those two things is everything. The anatomy of the pause. The pause has 3 components. They happen in sequence, fast, but distinct. Recognition. You notice the trigger. This is harder than it sounds because the collapse happens so quickly, but with practice you learn to catch it earlier. You feel the physical sensation before the reaction takes over. The heat in your chest, the tension in your fists, the adrenaline hit. That split second of noticing, I'm being triggered right now, is the first crack in the automatic pattern. Separation. You create distance between yourself and the feeling, not by suppressing it, by observing it, like you're watching yourself from outside. I'm angry becomes, I notice I'm feeling anger. It seems semantic. It's not. That tiny grammatical shift creates psychological distance. You're not the anger. You're the one experiencing anger. There's you, and there's the emotion, and there's space between them. Choice. In that space you decide, consciously, deliberately. Not what to feel. You don't control that, but what to do, how to channel the energy, whether to speak or stay silent, whether to engage or walk away. The choice might be to express the anger. That's fine. The Stoics weren't emotionless robots. They felt everything. They just didn't let feelings make their decisions. So you might choose to say, that comment pissed me off, here's why. Clear, direct, from a place of control. Or you might choose to let it go. This isn't worth my energy. Moving on. Either way you chose, that's what matters, not the specific choice, the fact that it was yours. Why 3 seconds works, there's neuroscience behind this. When you're triggered, your sympathetic nervous system activates, fight or flight. Your amygdala hijacks your prefrontal cortex. Blood flow redirects. Rational thought goes offline. This happens in milliseconds, but it doesn't last forever. The stress response peaks quickly, but it also begins to decline quickly, within seconds, not minutes. If you can interrupt the automatic reaction for just a few seconds, the physiology starts to shift. Your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, begins to activate. That gap is your life's work. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, internalized this lesson. He had everything Epictetus didn't: power, wealth, respect. And he knew it was all meaningless compared to the space between stimulus and response. His private journals, never meant for publication, are full of reminders to himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. An emperor reminding himself daily that his only real power was the pause, the space, the moment of choice between what happened and how he responded. If a slave and an emperor both arrived at the same conclusion from opposite ends of the power spectrum, maybe it's not circumstantial. Maybe it's fundamental. Maybe it's the one thing that actually matters. The space is always there. Here's what you need to understand. The space between stimulus and response always exists. Always. You're not creating something new. You're reclaiming something that's been there all along, collapsed and unused. Right now, it's compressed to nothing. Microseconds. Imperceptible. The trigger hits, and you react before you know you're reacting. But it's there, waiting, patient. Your work isn't to build the space. It's to stretch it, to slow down the automatic response long enough for consciousness to return, long enough to remember you're not a bundle of reflexes. You're a man with agency. This is why the Stoics practiced daily, why Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself every morning, why Epictetus trained his students through repetition and discipline. Because the space doesn't expand on its own. It requires intention, practice, failure and adjustment, and trying again. It requires you to interrupt the pattern consciously until the interruption becomes automatic. To build a new reflex that kicks in before the old one can hijack you, the trigger will still hit. The anger will still rise. The urge to react will still be there. But between that urge and your action, the space will open. And in that space, you'll remember something crucial. You have a choice. Not about what happened, not about what someone said or did, but about what you do next. That's your freedom, the only one that can't be taken from you. The question is whether you'll claim it. Chapter 2. The Pause. 3 seconds of sovereignty. The technique is absurdly simple, so simple you'll be tempted to dismiss it. Don't. When the trigger hits, when someone disrespects you, criticizes you, pressures you, whatever your specific pattern is, you pause. 3 seconds, that's all. One breath, in and out. Not a dramatic pause, not a performance, just a brief, intentional interruption of the automatic pattern. 3 seconds doesn't sound like much. In the context of reaction, it's an eternity. Because in those 3 seconds, everything changes. Your prefrontal cortex comes back online. The flood of stress hormones begins to ebb. The tunnel vision starts to widen. The automatic pattern loses its grip. In 3 seconds, you remember you're more than your reflexes. Here's what it looks like in practice. Your boss sends an email at 9 p.m. questioning your work. The old pattern. Immediate response. Defensive, irritated, typing while your heart's still racing. Send. Regret in the morning. New pattern. You see the email. You feel the anger rise. You notice your jaw clenching, your shoulders tensing, and you stop. 3 seconds. One breath. In that pause, you feel the anger. You don't suppress it. You acknowledge it. I'm angry. This feels unfair. I want to defend myself. And then you choose. Not from anger, from the space beyond it. Maybe you still respond tonight, but the response is measured, clear, professional. The words come from your prefrontal cortex, not your amygdala. Or maybe you realized, it's 9 p.m. and nothing productive happens from that state. You close the laptop. Deal with it in the morning when you're rested and rational. Either way, you responded. You didn't react. The gap between those two things is everything. The anatomy of the pause. The pause has 3 components. They happen in sequence, fast but distinct. Recognition. You notice the trigger. This is harder than it sounds because the collapse happens so quickly, but with practice, you learn to catch it earlier. You feel the physical sensation before the reaction takes over. The heat in your chest, the tension in your fists, the adrenaline hit. That split second of noticing, I'm being triggered right now, is the first crack in the automatic pattern. Separation. You create distance between yourself and the feeling, not by suppressing it, by observing it, like you're watching yourself from outside. I'm angry becomes, I notice I'm feeling anger. It seems semantic. It's not. That tiny grammatical shift creates psychological distance. You're not the anger. You're the one experiencing anger. There's you, and there's the emotion, and there's space between them. Choice. In that space, you decide. Consciously. Deliberately. Not what to feel. You don't control that. But what to do. How to channel the energy. Whether to speak or stay silent. Whether to engage or walk away. The choice might be to express the anger. That's fine. The Stoics weren't emotionless robots. They felt everything. They just didn't let feelings make their decisions. So you might choose to say, "That comment pissed me off. Here's why." Clear, direct, from a place of control. Or you might choose to let it go. "This isn't worth my energy. Moving on." Either way you chose, that's what matters, not the specific choice, the fact that it was yours. Why 3 seconds works. There's neuroscience behind this. When you're triggered, your sympathetic nervous system activates. Fight or flight. Your amygdala hijacks your prefrontal cortex. Blood flow redirects. Rational thought goes offline. This happens in milliseconds. But it doesn't last forever. The stress response peaks quickly, but it also begins to decline quickly, within seconds, not minutes. If you can interrupt the automatic reaction for just a few seconds, the physiology starts to shift. Your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, begins to activate. Deep breathing accelerates this. One slow breath triggers the vagus nerve, which signals safety to your brain. Heart rate starts to decrease. Blood flow returns to your frontal cortex. 3 seconds isn't magic. It's physiology. You're giving your nervous system time to complete its stress cycle and return to baseline. But here's the critical part. You have to practice when you're not triggered. You can't learn to pause in the middle of a meltdown. The neural pathway has to be built beforehand, when things are calm, when the stakes are low. Think of it like sparring. You drill the technique 1,000 times in training, so it's automatic when someone's actually swinging at you. The pause is the same. You practice it in minor annoyances. Traffic, slow internet, someone cutting in line. So it's there when your girlfriend says she needs to talk, or your father questions your choices. Start small. Build the reflex. Then, when it matters, the pause is already there. What happens in the pause? Here's what most men get wrong. They think the pause is about calming down. It's not. The pause isn't about becoming calm. It's about becoming conscious. You might still be angry during the pause. That's fine. The point isn't to eliminate the emotion. It's to create separation between the emotion and your action. In the pause, you're doing something radical. You're feeling what you feel without acting on it immediately. This is not natural. Your entire evolutionary history says, feel danger, react instantly. Delay is death. But you're not in danger. You're in a conversat. Ion, a meeting, a text exchange. The threats are social, not physical, and social threats require different responses than physical ones. Chapter 3. The Observer, the Man Who Watches. There are 2 versions of you operating simultaneously. One is reactive, emotional, immediate. This is the version that gets triggered, feels anger, wants to defend and attack and prove itself. The other is observant, calm, removed. This is the version that notices you're triggered, watches the anger rise, sees the urge to react without being consumed by it. Most men only know the first version. They are their emotions. When they're angry, they can't see past the anger. When they're anxious, the anxiety is all-consuming. The pause introduces you to the second version, the observer, the part of you that can watch yourself feel without becoming the feeling, that can notice your thoughts without believing them, that can recognize a pattern while it's happening and choose differently. This isn't dissociation. It's not detachment from reality. It's the opposite, deeper presence, clearer awareness of what's actually happening inside you. The Stoics called it stepping back or view from above. Marcus Aurelius practiced it constantly. In the middle of political intrigue, military campaigns, betrayal, and pressure, He trained himself to observe his reactions as if from outside himself. You have the power to strip away many superfluous troubles located wholly in your judgment, he wrote, and to possess a large room for yourself, embracing in thought the whole cosmos. Translation: you can choose to zoom out, to see yourself as a small part of something larger, to watch your reaction like you're watching another person. This is the observer, and once you meet him, everything changes. How to activate the observer. The observer isn't a technique you do, it's a perspective you adopt. Here's how you access it. When you feel the trigger, instead of identifying with the emotion, you narrate it. Not out loud, in your head, like you're a documentary narrator describing what's happening. I'm noticing anger rising. My jaw is clenching. I'm having the thought that this person disrespected me. I'm feeling an urge to say something aggressive. See what that does? It creates distance, separation. You're not saying, I'm angry and this person disrespected me. You're saying, I'm noticing anger and having the thought about disrespect. The difference is subtle, but seismic. When you narrate, you're automatically engaging your observer. The part of you that can describe the experience is, by definition, not fully submerged in it. This is why therapy works. Not because talking about problems solves them, because articulating what you're feeling activates the observer, which creates the space needed to respond differently. You don't need a therapist for this. You just need the habit of self-narration. Practice it throughout the day, not just in triggered moments. Notice sensations, thoughts, urges, without judging them. I'm noticing I'm tired. I'm having the thought that I won't finish this on time. I'm feeling restless. I'm noticing an urge to check my phone. Simple observations, no analysis, no interpretation, just noticing. Do this enough, and the observer becomes accessible instantly when you need him most. When the trigger hits, he's already there, watching, creating space. The observer sees patterns. Here's what the observer notices that the reactive self misses: patterns. When you're submerged in reaction, every situation feels unique, personal, unpredictable. From the observer's perspective, you see the repetition, the same triggers leading to the same responses leading to the same outcomes. Your boss questions your work. You feel disrespected. You get defensive. The relationship becomes tense. This pattern has played out in 3 different jobs with 3 different bosses. From inside the reaction, it faiblesse. This boss doesn't appreciate me. From the observer's perspective, it's, I have a pattern of interpreting feedback as disrespect and responding with defensiveness. One is about them. The other is about you. One leaves you powerless. The other gives you agency. The observer doesn't judge this, doesn't shame you for having the pattern, just sees it clearly. Ah, there it is again. The disrespect pattern. Interesting. This clarity is leverage. You can't change what you can't see. The reactive self can't see the pattern because it's inside it. The observer can see it because he's outside it. And once you see it, really see it, you can interrupt it. Not immediately, not perfectly, but you can catch it earlier each time. Recognize the trigger faster. Create the pause sooner. Until eventually, the pattern loses its power. Not because you defeated it through willpower, because you saw it clearly enough that it stopped being automatic. The observer is not passive. Don't confuse observation with inaction. The observer doesn't make you passive or detached or emotionally neutered. He makes you effective, because the observer sees clearly, and clarity is the foundation of right action. When you're submerged in reaction, you act from distortion. Everything is amplified, personal, urgent. You see threats that aren't there. You miss solutions that are obvious. The observer sees accurately. This person actually isn't disrespecting you. They're stressed and took it out on you, or they are disrespecting you and you need to set a boundary, but you can do it clearly rather than reactively. From this clarity, your actions are precise, measured, effective, not weak, powerful. Think of it this way. The reactive self is all output, no input.
It's firing off responses without processing what's actually happening, like shooting in the dark. The observer processes first, sees clearly, then chooses the response that serves you. Sometimes that response is forceful, direct, confrontational even, but it's chosen confrontation, not reflexive aggression, and
people feel the difference. When you confront someone from reaction, they feel attacked, they get defensive, the conflict escalates. When you confront someone from the observer's clarity, they feel your certainty, your groundedness. Even if they don't like what you're saying, they respect it, because you're not out of control, you're totally in control, and that commands respect. Training the observer strengthens through use, like a muscle. Start with low-stakes practice. Body scanning. Several times a day, pause, and notice physical sensations without judgment. I'm noticing tension in my shoulders, tightness in my jaw, warmth in my chest. You're not trying to change anything, just building the habit of observation. Thought watching. Notice thoughts as they arise. I'm having the thought that I'm behind schedule. I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough at this. Again, no analysis, no trying to change the thoughts, just watching them like clouds passing. Emotion labeling. When you feel something, name it specifically, not just bad or stressed. Get granular. Irritated, disappointed, anxious about appearing incompetent. The more specific the label, the more distance you create from the emotion. Do these practices when you're calm. They build the neural pathways so the observer is accessible when things aren't calm. Then when the trigger hits, the observer is already trained, already there, already watching. And from that watching comes the pause. From the pause comes the response. From the response comes the life you're actually trying to build. Chapter 4. The choice, what you do with the space. You've created the pause. You've activated the observer. The space between stimulus and response is now visible, tangible, real. Now what? This is where most men stumble. They think the pause itself is the goal, that creating space is enough. It's not. The space is potential. What you do with it determines everything. Because here's the truth. You still have to respond. The situation still requires action. The person is still waiting for your answer. You still have to decide what to do next. The pause doesn't eliminate the need for response. It just gives you the freedom to choose which response. And that's where the real work begins. The question that changes everything. In the space, you ask yourself one question. The same question every single time. Not what do I want to say, not what would make me feel better, not even what's the right thing to do. The question is, what response serves who I'm becoming? Read that again. Let it land. Not who you are, who you're becoming. Because who you are right now includes all the patterns, all the automatic responses, all the ways you've reacted that got you here. Who you're becoming is the man on the other side of this work. The man who responds instead of reacts. Who keeps his word to himself. Who builds the life he respects. Every response you choose either moves you toward that man or away from him. So in the space you ask, what would that version of me do right now? Not perfectly. Not without feeling anger or frustration or hurt, but consciously, deliberately, in alignment with who he's building himself to be. Sometimes that means speaking up. Sometimes it means walking away. Sometimes it means doing nothing, which is not the same as doing nothing reactively. The specific action matters less than the source of the action. Did it come from the pattern, or did it come from choice? The 3 responses. Once you're in the space, you have 3 categories of response, not infinite options. 3 paths. Engage. You address the situation directly, with clarity, firmness, honesty. You say what needs to be said, do what needs to be done, set the boundary that needs setting. This isn't reaction. It's conscious confrontation. You're choosing to engage because engagement serves your values, not because your amygdala is demanding it. Example. Your friend makes a joke at your expense in front of others. Old pattern. laugh it off and simmer inside, or lash out aggressively. From the space. Hey, that crossed a line. I need you not to do that again. Clear, direct. No apology, no aggression, just a boundary. Redirect. You acknowledge what happened but choose to channel your energy elsewhere. You don't engage with the trigger directly because it's not worth your energy or it won't be productive. This isn't avoidance. It's strategic disengagement. You're not running from the situation. You're choosing not to feed it. Example. Someone baits you online, trying to start an argument. Old pattern. Take the bait. Spend an hour typing responses. Feel like shit afterwards. From the space. You see the bait. Feel the urge. Notice it. And close the tab. Your energy belongs somewhere better. Accept. You acknowledge the situation and consciously choose not to change it. Not because you're powerless, because you've decided it's not worth changing or it's outside your control anyway. This is the hardest response for most men. It feels like surrender, like you're letting someone get away with something. But acceptance from the space is different from passive tolerance. One is a choice. The other is helplessness disguised as peace. Example. Your father criticizes your life choices for the 100th time. Old pattern. Either defend yourself exhaustively or shut down, in resentment. From the space. He's always going to think this way. I'm not going to change his mind today. I can let this go without it meaning anything about me. You're not weak, you're free. Free from needing him to understand. Free from needing to convince him. Free from giving him power over your peace. How to choose. Here's how you know which response serves you. Engage when the situation directly affects your boundaries, values, or self-respect. The relationship matters and can benefit from clarity. Staying silent would lead to resentment or loss of integrity. The other person is capable of hearing you, and the timing is right. Redirect when the situation is designed to drain you, bait, manipulation, bad faith arguments. Your energy is better spent elsewhere. Engaging would feed a dynamic you're trying to end. You're not calm enough to engage productively yet. Except when the situation is outside your control. The other person isn't capable of change or receptive to feedback. The relationship is ending or already over. Fighting it costs more than letting it be. It's temporary and doesn't threaten what matters. These aren't rigid rules. They're guidelines. Situations are complex. You'll make mistakes. That's fine. The point is that you're choosing consciously, not defaulting automatically. Over time, you develop instinct for which response serves you. The observer sees clearly enough that the right path becomes obvious. But early on, when you're unsure, default to this. If you'd regret not speaking up, engage. If you'd regret speaking up, redirect or accept. Trust that. Your future self knows. What response looks like. Let's make this concrete. Same trigger, 3 different responses, all legitimate, depending on context and what serves you. Scenario. Your girlfriend says, "You never help around the house." Reactive pattern. Immediate defensiveness. "That's not true. I just cleaned the kitchen yesterday. You don't appreciate anything I do." Escalation. Argument. Nothing resolved. Both people feel worse. Now from the space. Engage. 3-second pause. Notice the defensiveness. Choose to address it directly. "I hear you feeling frustrated. I want to understand what you need. Can we talk specifically about what would help you feel supported?" You didn't defend, didn't attack. You engaged with the actual issue beneath her words. Redirect. 3-second pause. Notice you're exhausted, and this conversation won't be productive right now. "I can tell you're frustrated. I'm too tired to have this conversation well right now. Can we talk about this tomorrow, when I can actually listen?" You acknowledged her, set a boundary, didn't abandon the issue, just chose better timing. Accept. 3-second pause. Recognize this is her pattern when she's stressed. It's not really about the house, and she'll calm down on her own. You're right. I could do more. And you mean it without resentment because you've chosen acceptance. You do the dishes, let her decompress, and move on. 3 different responses, 3 different contexts where each one might be right. The reactive pattern gives you one response that's almost always wrong. The space gives you 3 responses that can each be exactly right. That's freedom. The consequence test. Still not sure which response serves you? Ask this: if I do this, will I respect myself tomorrow? Not, will I feel good? Not, will it work out perfectly? Will you respect yourself for how you handled it? If you engage and speak your truth clearly, you'll respect yourself even if the conversation is hard. If you redirect because you're choosing your energy wisely, you'll respect yourself for the discipline. If you accept because you've decided it's not worth your peace, you'll respect yourself for the maturity. But if you react, if you snap, lash out, shut down, say the thing you know you'll regret, you won't respect yourself. You'll feel the same shame you've felt every other time. The space is your chance to break that cycle. That's what you do with the space. You use it to become someone you respect. Chapter 5. The Practice. Why you'll want to quit. Let's be honest about what's coming. You're going to fail, repeatedly. You're going to practice this for 2 days, feel like you've got it, and then blow up at someone completely, worse than usual even, because you'll be frustrated that the technique doesn't work. You're going to create the pause sometimes and still choose the wrong response. You'll be aware you're reacting, watch yourself do it, and do it anyway. You're going to have people in your life who preferred the old pattern, who knew how to manipulate reactive you, who are now confused or threatened by your self-control. You're going to question whether this is worth it, whether you're overthinking, whether being yourself, meaning being automatic, isn't actually more authentic. This is normal. This is the process. This is where most men quit. Don't. Because here's what they don't tell you about behavior change. It gets worse before it gets better. When you first start creating the pause, you become hyper-aware of all the times you don't. Every reaction feels like failure. Every blown opportunity feels like proof you're not capable of change. You're not failing. You're waking up, and waking up is uncomfortable. Before you started this work, you reacted constantly but barely noticed. It was just how you were. Now you notice every time, and noticing feels like failure. It's not. It's progress. Because you can't change what you don't see. Noticing is the first step, the essential step, even if you notice after the fact, even if you notice mid-reaction but can't stop it yet. You're building awareness, and awareness is the foundation of everything that follows. The 40-day commitment. Change takes time, not because you're slow or broken, because you're rewiring neural pathways that have been automatic for decades. Research on habit formation suggests it takes anywhere from 18 to 254 days for a behavior to become automatic, average 66 days. But you'll see measurable change in 40 days, not mastery, but visible, undeniable progress. So here's the commitment. 40 days, not forever, not I'll try. 40 days of deliberate practice. Every single day, you practice the pause. In low-stakes situations and high-stakes situations, when you remember, and even when you forget until after. Every single day, you activate the observer, notice what you're feeling, name it, watch it without acting on it immediately. Every single day, you ask the question, what response serves who I'm becoming? 40 days. Mark it on a calendar. Day 1 through day 40, non-negotiable. Not because 40 is magic, because 40 is long enough to build the reflex and short enough to maintain commitment. And here's what happens around day 21. You slip. Badly. React in a way you haven't in weeks. Feel like you've lost all progress. You haven't. This is your nervous system's extinction burst, the old pattern making one last desperate attempt to reassert itself. It's a sign you're close to breakthrough, not evidence of failure. So you note it. You learn from it. You return to practice. And you continue to day 40. The daily practice. Here's your concrete daily practice. Simple, repeatable, no excuses. Morning, 5 minutes. Sit, breathe. Notice physical sensations without judgment. Recall one situation from yesterday where you reacted instead of responded. Replay it from the observer's perspective. No shame, just curiosity. Visualize responding instead. What would the pause have looked like? What response would have served you? This isn't dwelling on failure. It's training, rehearsal, building the neural pathway for next time. Throughout the day, practice the pause in minor irritations, traffic, delays, small annoyances. Every time you notice an emotional reaction, pause and label it. Frustration, impatience, defensiveness. Ask the question, what response serves who I'm becoming? You won't remember every time. That's fine. The times you do remember are building the reflex for the times that matter. Evening, 5 minutes. Review the day. Count the times you created the pause, even if imperfectly. Note the times you didn't, not to beat yourself up, to understand the pattern better. Acknowledge one moment where you responded instead of reacted, no matter how small. This keeps the observer active, reinforces progress, prevents the discouragement that kills most behavior change. 10 minutes a day, that's the investment. Less time than you spend scrolling mindlessly. But you have to do it, every day, for 40 days. What mastery looks like. You'll know you're making progress when the space expands naturally. What started as forced 3-second pauses become 10 seconds, 30 seconds, sometimes hours or days between trigger and response. You catch triggers earlier, before you're fully activated, before the stress response peaks. Just the first hint of tension, and the observer is already there. Other people notice, not because you told them you're working on this, because you're different, more grounded, less reactive, harder to rattle. You stop taking things personally, not because you're detached or don't care, because the observer sees clearly that most reactions aren't about you, they're about the other person's patterns intersecting with yours. You feel powerful in a way you never did when you were reacting. Not loud power, quiet power, the power of a man who knows he won't be controlled. Relationships improve, not because conflict disappears, because you engage with conflict from clarity instead of emotion. People trust you more because they know you won't blow up unpredictably. You respect yourself. This is the real measure. You look at how you handle difficult situations and feel proud. Not perfect, but proud of the effort, the growth, the discipline. Mastery isn't never being triggered. Mastery is being triggered and responding anyway, feeling everything and letting the space exist anyway. Mastery is freedom. When you slip, because you will. Even after 40 days, even after years of practice, you'll slip. Someone will hit the exact right trigger at the exact wrong moment, and you'll react. Badly. All that work, seemingly evaporated in 10 seconds of automatic behavior. Here's what you do. Acknowledge it immediately. Not to the other person necessarily, though sometimes that's appropriate. To yourself. I just reacted. I chose that. I own it. No excuses. No, they made me. No, I couldn't help it. You reacted. Full stop. Repair if possible. If your reaction damaged a relationship or situation, repair it. I reacted poorly earlier. That's not how I want to show up. Here's what I should have said. Simple, direct. No self-flagellation, just acknowledgement and correction. Learn from it. What was the trigger? What was the context? What was different about this situation that collapsed the space? The observer doesn't judge. He investigates, gets curious, uses the slip as data. Return to practice immediately. Don't let one slip become 3 days of giving up. The practice continues. The next trigger is your chance to respond differently. One slip doesn't erase progress. Only quitting does. The man on the other side. Picture him for a moment. The man you're becoming through this practice. He still feels everything you feel. Anger, frustration, hurt, disappointment. He's not emotionally neutered or detached. But he's not controlled by what he feels. He experiences emotion fully and responds from clarity. People trust him because he's predictable in the best sense, not rigid, grounded. They know he won't blow up, won't lash out, won't say things he doesn't mean. He has difficult conversations cleanly, sets boundaries without apology, confronts issues directly because he's not afraid of his own reactions. He sleeps well because he's not carrying the weight of regret from reactions he wishes he could take back.